Is Spider-Man 2 still as good as people say it is? Let's talk about that. Hey there, this is your Matt Doodle with Too Much Time in His Hands, Doodle here with another video, and today I want to talk about my thoughts on the original Spider-Man 2 movie. Now I know people have praised this movie so much, and what else is there to say? And to be honest, I don't know. I just want to talk about this movie and why I love it so much. Because if you've seen my first video, you can tell how much that movie was my childhood, and this is an extension to that, so I want to talk about it. So let's get into things that I really like. First, the suit in this movie. This is a completely different suit from the first movie itself. Now, you may be asking why they had to change it. Well, first, it got stolen. I don't know why, I don't know how it got stolen, but this was back then before people were like so laser focused on checking on things now because, you know, this is before the internet and all that stuff. So it got stolen, so they decided, you know what, let's update the suit and to make it better. So they added more pattern on the suit, not just on the blue. It has more of that shape that we see in Spider-Man now on the red, which makes it look less homey, even though the original one didn't look, you know, homemade. It looked like a really expensive, but this one even looked somehow more expensive. But it still looked good. The silver was more prominent now instead of just more gray, which the first one kind of showed. So they have that. The blue has more of that shape, even more shown, which is cool. The suit is just better. Something that I really appreciate about this sequel in particular is the fact that everything progresses. A lot of times now, whenever you see a sequel, it's usually from a movie just trying to sequel bait you. It's trying to say, hey, we're going to have a sequel, so I hope you like this movie so you can watch the other one. But this one, it felt like its own contained thing, if that makes sense. Because, of course, you watch the original one, and then you watch this one. It's Spider-Man 2. But when you watch this one, it doesn't really feel like you need to watch the first one. It's so self-contained in itself. Like, yeah, you have to at least know who Spider-Man is, who MJ is, who Harry Osborn is, but not too much to really go back to, unless you're talking about, you know, Green Goblin parts, which even then, that was small at the end. But that was still cool to show. It was so beautifully put together. And you know what? If you still want a refresher on what happened in the first movie, this movie has a perfect intro to the film with amazing imagery by the amazing Alex Ross. And this was before I even knew who that was. Even for a long time after already reading Alex Ross, I didn't know that this was him until I had to look. I'm like, well, his art looks familiar. Let me look him up. And I found out that it was him. So this is an awesome way to, you know, introduce you to the film while also recapping you to the first film. And of course, this movie is still cheesy. That hasn't gone away. This is 2004. And Sam Raimi cooked with this movie. It talked about so many very real things, about pain, about loss, about growing up, about letting go, even with things you want the most. And it did it in a way where anyone could understand. Take note, I was 3 years old when this movie came out. And yeah, of course, later on I had to understand it. It was still great. Now, don't get me wrong. There are still stuff in this movie that I don't necessarily like, and it all comes from MJ, to be honest. I don't like how she was basically portrayed. She still was flirting with Peter after the first movie. He said, no, let's just be friends. And Peter, you know, of course, still being dumb and kind of being, you know, more, I still want to be with her, but I have to be in arm's length because of my Spider-Man responsibilities. But I get it, the perspective that to her, she's seeing him being flaky. But she doesn't really talk to him about that, really, in this movie. This is what's weird to me out. If you go to that scene where they talk near their houses again, like in the first one, it's weird. You know why? Because she would try to, you know, get him to talk. You know, he would try to talk in his weird way. This is where the cringy parts happen.
I liked seeing you tonight, Peter.
Oh boy, yeah.
But he basically pulls back because, you know, what he has to do. So, and then she revealed that she was already talking to a guy in the first place. I'm like, wait, hold up. So wait, if Peter had actually said yes to all your advances, you would just break up with the other guy already? That's kind of douchey in my mind. And not just the beginning part. Literally, later on, if you've seen this movie, she literally dumps her fiance at the end for Peter at the end. And I know it's supposed to be a happy ending for Peter, but I still kind of feel sad. And honestly, it doesn't really feel right getting older, that's supposed to be his happy ending. But that's most of my gripes on this movie. The rest of the movie is just flawless in my mind. Well, not flawless, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, when they introduced Dr. Octavius as the new bad guy, the way they improved on him as a character, because in the original comics, he was literally just a bad guy that Peter had to fight. That's it. But then the 90s cartoon came out and made him more of a mentor. So then in this movie, they got inspiration from that, most likely, and saw him being a mentor to Peter, about his collider. And seeing Octavius being such a good guy with the wife, and if you know the backstory, you know what's going to happen. And it's sad. You're like, no. Basically like how in Spider-Man PS4 that happened, how they've been doing that more often. You're knowing it's going to happen, but you don't want it to happen. And even for newcomers, like myself at the time, I didn't know that was going to happen. So seeing him transform into Dr. Octopus was awesome and spooky. And even with the so-so or bad CGI, they mix it with some really good practical effects, which then can blur your mind into seeing that as a real thing. So I love it that in this movie, the arms that you see for Dr. Octopus whenever it's a close-up or when they don't have to really move that much, those are real. Those are actual robotic pieces that someone will be controlling in the background, actually moving them. And I think that's where the believability of Dr. Octopus was, captured better in this film than even like in the newer films where it's all CGI. And what I love is about the lesson of what your stubbornness can do to you. He didn't want to shut off the collider, and so this entire mess happened. He lost his wife and he got fused to the arms, which then shows to this part, which made me learn about Sam Raimi's horror roots with, Octavius' arms killing all the doctors that were trying to separate the arms from him. Very terrifying as a kid, which I don't know why I was allowed to watch that, but it was also cool. Toughened me up a little bit. See, and then there's so many cool scenes in this movie. Like, in the beginning, where Peter is having, to be Spider-Man and stop a crime in progress. This entire scene is like a boost of what the original movie was like. Because, there was a lot of swinging and all that stuff, but not action in the same setting. Spider-Man was literally flipping, swinging, doing all the cool stuff while trying to stop these criminals. It was just so cool. And then this specific scene, just like, I always rewind it when I was a kid. And then also in the back of your mind, you notice that he has a reservation with MJ because he was supposed to go to her play. So there's also that intense waiting. It's like, you have to be careful in that scene. And you know what else is like, really funny? Besides all the cool action we see at this part, beforehand, you see Peter just trying to go to MJ's play normally, not doing any Spider-Man stuff yet. But of course, some crime happens and he has to flip, and then his bike gets destroyed. And then that's when he realizes he has to do Spider-Man stuff. And then you see some kids going like, "How did you do that? Eat your greens, kids," which is a very funny and Spider-Man thing to do. Teach kids to eat healthy.
How'd you do that?
Work out, plenty of rest, eat your green vegetables.
That's what my mom is always saying. I just never actually believed her.
And what's interesting is you get to see the downfall of what being Spider-Man is really like for someone. He has to balance his life and it's not working at all. We get to see that. Like, Peter fails at going at his job, and then we get this amazing line from the owner, which I would repeat over and over as a kid. And probably even now.
Go!
but then he fails at, being there for MJ. He fails at doing school stuff. And we see that over and over because of Spider-Man. This is something I always have to say. This is the reason why people love these movies so much. It may not be exactly aligned to the comics, but it feels like that, especially with this movie, at how much Peter has been abused in this film.
No!
And I know that sounds weird to say, but it shows his progression to that. People just see the abuse, but they don't see him progressing as a character. He quits as being Spider-Man because he was losing everything. He lost his abilities. Pure depression, which is what I like to think because of the way he lost it. He lost it out of depression. And it hurts. So he had to heal himself, and he tried to push past it, to be Spider-Man for everyone else while still having what he wants. But he found out he can't. So he finds it in him to become Spider-Man again, in the weirdest place possible, because the way he talks to MJ that he can't be with her anymore because he realizes he has to be Spider-Man, it doesn't really work because MJ is really trying to push, which is really weird. This is where the weird part always happens. She's engaged to JJ's son, which is so weird.
Kiss me.
And Octavius kidnaps her, and then that's how he gets his powers back, which is really strange. I know that's where the weird stuff happens, but this is where I truly like to think that he learns to be Spider-Man better through Aunt May's words. I didn't really talk about her in the first movie because, I kind of forgot, but she is so important in this film to tell you what it means to be a hero and what it means to be there for people. And it doesn't have to relate to Spider-Man exactly, but just being you exactly, to be a hero. And the lesson always kicks me in the ass. It's always like, oh my god, I feel that so much.
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble, and finally allows us to die with pride. Even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most. Even our dreams.
So this movie is just so good. It makes you cry, it makes you happy, it makes you sad. Like when Peter realizes he didn't have his powers and he still had to help someone because of a burning building, like he had to look in his chest and he didn't have his suit. So it's a little showing that he doesn't have his powers. But he still went in because he realized he has to. He has to be a hero because he saw how crime has been going up. He saved the girl, but then there was someone else to save. And he realizes there's so many situations where Spider-Man was important. Spider-Man is important not just to other people, but to him and helps him, if that makes sense. This movie is a lot of lessons, to be honest. And we get the cool fight scenes too. Again, like Spider-Man versus Dr. Octopus was one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen, even to this day. CGI, not always the best, but it's still cool if you can get past it, which I do. We see Jameson being awesome. Jameson, how he is. I love that he almost kind of had a progression because like when Spider-Man was gone and Jameson got, the Spider-Man suit, he was glad that, Spider-Man was gone. Haha, everything's gone. But then, when Dr. Octopus was causing so much damage, Jameson felt bad. And he was like, oh my god, this is all my fault because Spider-Man was a hero that I didn't know, that I didn't see. But then when like Peter came back for his costume, coming back as Spider-Man, Jameson goes back into being like, I want Spider-Man, just going back to being the mean guy, the one that just trashes Spider-Man again. And it was like the best because it's like as soon as Spider-Man comes back, Jameson has to be a douche again, which is awesome. But it's kind of weird if you think about it that Peter puts on the suit again, because if we go by the extended scene that they had for the full movie, Jameson wore the costume while Peter was, not being Spider-Man. So it's weird to think about that. Jameson wore the costume as well. We get to see Tobey Maguire beat Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Still great in my mind. He actually got better. Harry Osborn being a douche because he losing it because his dad died and he saw Spider-Man do it, and he's mad at Peter for not telling him where Spider-Man is, even though, that's Peter, so you really can't, even in general. Even though I always think that, I don't know how Peter couldn't just say, Harry, it wasn't me, it was your father by himself.
Peter, you killed my father.
There are bigger things happening here than me and you.
Because by the third movie, he couldn't reason with him anymore. So I don't understand it. That's where I mean, some things are kind of weird even to this day. And I always got to say that, Robbie, the second in command to JJ, knows that Peter's Spider-Man. That's an obvious one for me, at least. And the ending message of this film is just so beautiful that sometimes you have to let things go, as we saw with Dr. Octopus. He had to let things go with that machine because it was causing so much harm. It wasn't helping anyone, even though he was supposed to, because he was supposed to, take energy from the sun. But it just made more harm. That's it.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
What I think about a good movie can do is not just be a fulfilling movie, is giving you so much lessons, so much things to take from it that aren't just physically what you're seeing. More what I mean is that the lessons actually stick with you, like being, better, rising above what you think you can and can't do, even when things hurt. And it always helped me growing up. I think it helped a lot of people with this, with that exactly, because it helped me a lot as well. When I'm angry, when I'm sad, when things are pissing me off, I would actually go and watch this movie to see everything and learn, hey, you are doing okay. You are amazing. This is what that felt for me exactly. Not just what's exactly in the film, but what it could teach you exactly. And that's why I think this movie has lived to the test of time. Think about it. How many years has it been since the movie came out? And it's still talked about so much? I think that's why. I want to ask you, did you like this film? Did you not like this movie? Do you think it's overrated? Do you still rewatch this movie over and over? Please let me know in the comments down below. I read all your comments and I appreciate everyone who does. And if you're still here, just know that my thoughts on Spider-Man 3 will be out next week. So be on the lookout for that. So subscribe and hit the notification bell to wait for that. So if you like this entire video and you want to see more, this has been Dudamite, and I hope to see everyone in the next video.